video is going to be about Rocket League settings, and it can be applied to all systems, consoles, PC, etc. But I am doing this on a PlayStation, specifically a PlayStation 4 Pro. So it will be certainly geared towards that. And PC settings will have some extra things, especially in the video section, that PlayStation and Xbox don't have. With that said, these settings are the most common pro settings, and they have been looked at and approved, if you will, by my coach. So the research fleshes it out in the sense that these are the most common pro settings that are used, as well as getting that seal of approval, if you will, from the person who coaches me. Anyway, with that said, gameplay, a lot of this is going to be personal preference, but with the send rates, server send rates, etc., you want to have these as high as your system will allow. Now with cross-platform play, it's ideal to have that check marked. This is going to increase your opponent player pool to draw from when getting matched for competition. Showing extra mode ranks, like the divisions that you're in. Personal preference, but if you are a person that gets stressed out by constantly going up or down a division, you may want to uncheck mark this. Game stats level display. I like to have just the main stats, but you can choose to have all or no stats if you want. And tournament schedule region. You're going to want to set this to the region which you live, or at least the region that you mainly want to compete in tournaments in. I believe this will also show you the tournament times in your local time zone. All right, with that said, let's move on to camera settings. You're going to want to have camera shake off. Yes, this is kind of personal preference, but it really isn't needed in the game. It doesn't add anything, assuming you're playing the game for competitive reasons. It can actually be more of a distraction when you're trying to have optimal concentration and fine motor skills in your gameplay. Now your field of view, all of these settings are what I recommend. However, field of view, there is a range on some of these settings. So most common, you'll find it anywhere between 105 degrees and 110 degrees, I believe. The distance, you're going to find that anywhere between 260 and 280. Height is going to be anywhere from 100 to 110. Your angle is going to be anywhere between -3 and -5. Your stiffness will be anywhere between 0.4 and 0.5. Now your swivel speed, it's good to have that as high as you can tolerate. I believe the average is going to be anywhere between 4 and 5. But if you can push that all the way up as high as it'll go, so much the better. Okay, that's going to contribute. It's like if you play competitive RPGs, for example, or first-person shooters, for example, and stuff. The faster that you can turn and see who's shooting at you or what's happening, so much the better. Same thing in Rocket League, but it can be very disorienting to have it set too high for a lot of people. The same thing goes with your transition speed. While it is personal preference, again, it can be too disorienting if it's set too high. The average for most most high-level players is going to be anywhere between 1 and 1.4. Your invert swivel, that's personal preference. If you're one of those people that likes to have your controls inverted, so be it. Steering sensitivity and aerial sensitivity is going to be anywhere between 1 and 1.4. All right, this is going to affect your fine grain control when you're in the air or on the ground with your steering. Now, controller dead zone. Typically, that's going to be anywhere between 0.05 and 0.1. Now, if you have a controller that has a problem with stick drift, obviously the recommendation is to get a new controller, but you may have to, until you can get the new controller, if it just happened, you may have to play with this controller dead zone. But ideally, you want it low. You want to be able to have that fine grain control in your movement for doing shots and dribbling and other advanced techniques. Dodge dead zone, anywhere between 0.4, 0.6, I think, is about the average. Controller vibration, same thing as before. You want to have that disabled. It's not necessary. It can distract you. It can disrupt your fine grain control when you're in the heat of the fight, so to speak. If you have that disabled, your vibration intensity obviously is going to be irrelevant. Ball camera mode should be toggle. The majority of the time, you're going to have ball camera on. It's not necessary to change it to a hold, which is your other option. Just toggle is all you need. Now, the key bindings, these are important to be able to do more advanced maneuvers. And ideally, you want to have your bindings, all of your settings really, set from the get-go to the best possible settings to eliminate you having every month or every 2 months or whatever having to relearn new settings, because now you've learned that this is the best setting, etc., etc. That can really disrupt your gameplay. You want to have your settings and your key bindings so you can develop that muscle memory control and just focus on learning the game and improving that muscle memory. So drive forward, drive backwards, jump, boost, power slide, air roll, focusing on ball, rear view. These are all pretty much standard. 99.9% of all players are going to have these controls. Now on PlayStation, scoreboard I have set for this touchpad. Most people, it's most common to have the scoreboard set for the options button. If you're playing on PlayStation, the options button is hard-coded to give you options, menu options, PlayStation options. So you're effectively down a button. Now to get around that, you don't have to check the scoreboard very often, and clicking this scroll pad is quite easy and quick. So it's a good solution, and typically that's going to be used for your chatting options. But when you're doing chat, quick chat is really the only option you have when you're using a console, at least on PlayStation. It's really impractical to use a Bluetooth controller and do anything other than quick chat. So you're going to have down here, you can see the text chatting is just turned off. And since you're doing that, in its place, you're going to have the scroll pad. The scroll pad is typically used for activating the text chatting by default. And you can see the music tracks. If you're a person that listens to music, you may want to change some of your bindings around down here. Now, going up here to arrow right, arrow left. That is, respectively, the left is the square, because that's on the left side. Circle is on the right side. It makes sense. There is debate among pros and high-level players about whether it's best to have only one directional arrow or to have two. My favorite pro players, they have both directional arrows. That's what I've gone with. It also makes sense to have it, even if I don't use it. It's there, so once again, if I decide later on to do more advanced techniques that I need it, I don't have to remap it and relearn my mapping. It's there. It's done. Now, with that said, there is a website that you can go to here on Liquipedia to get a list of player control settings if you're interested in looking up one of your favorite pro players and what settings they use and keybinds that they use. And the rest of this, like I said, the music, quick chat, these are all pretty standard. And then down here, you're getting into like free play type things. And your savings, adding a keyframe. All right. Scroll down here so you can see all these settings. These are all pretty much standard. And that's it for your controls and your keybinds. Now your interface. These are all the controls that I recommend. The most important on here is going to be nameplate scale. I would say anywhere between 170 and as high as it'll go. I think it goes up to 200%. It's ideal. It's important because you need to be able to easily see where your teammates and the opponents are on the field. It's easier to do if that nameplate scale is a good size. It's also ideal for being able to read when somebody is doing a kickoff, if they're actually getting closer to the ball. In other words, are they faking? Match notifications. This is personal preference. I personally like to have all notifications. Let's see, what else on here? Connection quality indicators. I think this is important, albeit still personal preference. I think it's important, especially if you're getting disconnection errors. Like, am I disconnecting or is my ping going down? Am I having issues? If I'm getting notifications, it's alerting me to a potential problem where I can change my gameplay style while it's happening. If you're playing with team members, you can get into a safer position. So your teammates take over, maybe communicate with them, telling you you're starting to have some connection issues. If you're colorblind, obviously, you're going to want to check that on. Forcing default team colors. The majority of high-level players checkmark this. It can be kind of jarring and distracting to have the field that you're playing on have radically different colors from the standard default blue and orange. It can be quite jarring and distracting, so most high-level players will turn that off. However, it is personal preference. If that doesn't bother you and you like having the team colors, knock yourself out. Notifications during the gameplay. This is uncheckmarked. It's not necessary. They can be a distraction. If they are necessary for you, or you just absolutely have to have every single social notification that pops up and you don't find it distracting or you don't care about the distraction, go ahead and check mark that. Team color boost meter, I like to have that check marked just because it's an added way for me to always remember, especially with my aging brain, to always remember what color, what side I'm playing on. Am I blue or am I orange? Metric, personal preference, obviously. Now moving on to video settings. Video settings, These are, I would definitely say vertical sync should be off. These other things, yeah, personal preference, but for the most part, if you're playing this game competitively, turn them off. You don't need them. If you're playing competitively, it can be a distraction. It's more difficult if you have a gray, foggy, rainy backdrop. It can be hard sometimes to see quickly and accurately exactly where the ball is when it's up in the air against that backdrop. Uh, Same thing with transparent goalposts. You want to be able to see somebody hiding in that goalpost. There are people that will hide in there and kind of hide in the corner and trying to stay out of sight, waiting for the ball to come around. They'll pop out like an eel popping out of its little hole. Audio. Now, these are all going to be personal preference. Okay. I don't listen to the music and stuff, so I have all that turned off. However, you do want to have these balanced in such a way where you can easily hear the engine sounds of the other vehicles on the field. Okay? Your teammates and your opponents. That is about the only important thing with the sound mixing in here. Have these balanced in such a way where you can hear the engines of other vehicles once they're getting closer to you easily. It's a real necessity for high level improved gameplay. Now, coming down here to player anthems, I have those turned off. That's personal preference. If you like the anthems, turn them on. But streamer safe music, if you stream or record your videos to put up online on YouTube or something, then you should probably consider check marking that. And finally, we come to chat. Now I have things set for just my party and friends and stuff, so these settings reflect that. This is fine here. Now check chat, text chat, you're going to see I have friends only. Now this is personal preference, but I have it on friends only. I change it to allow all when I play like 6-mans or 2-mans, if you're familiar with what those are. The people who play in those are more serious players, and you don't get as much problem with toxicity in there and spamming text. That's the primary reason why I have this turned off, especially at lower ranks. It's my understanding at higher ranks it becomes less of a problem, but at lower ranks there's a lot of toxicity. People spam the same message. They have toxic comments in there. If you're the kind of person that who gets bothered by that, that's certainly going to be a problem. You might want to turn this to friends only. It can be a distraction, simply just having all of these messages pop up. Quite frankly, when I'm competing against my opponent, I don't care what they have to say. They're not saying anything that is of value or need to me. So I turn that off and turn it only on when I do 2-mans. But again, personal preference, but bear in mind how you're affected by that. If you do get upset, tilted by toxicity, you may want to consider turning that off. Quick chat options, again, personal preference, but you want to make sure you have all of your options. Up here, information for team. This is going to be communication between only your teammates if you play on teams and things. I like to have some kind of logic to it. So you'll see under team, for example, the left arrow for I'm on your left, the right arrow for I'm on your right. Makes sense. Everything over here on the ends with the down arrows are going to be like responses, like saying thank you to somebody complimenting a shot of mine or whatever. Okay. And then my primary ones are all going to be on the ups, on the up D-pads. So make sure you have all of your options covered that you may want to have in here. But otherwise, yeah, personal preference. So those are your settings.